Born into a famous family, this young man has no skills or divine hand, so Belle's life is filled with beatings. Moreover, the children born to concubines in this family, like Belle and his sister Sarah, were called bastards, and they were constantly mistreated and unfairly treated. After every beating, Belle would feel guilty toward his sister for being so useless and weak, causing her to be implicated. At times like these, Sarah never blamed him but comforted her brother. Touched by his sister's kindness and sincere affection, Belle promised that he would become strong enough to protect her with his life one day. However, unexpectedly, the very next day, Belle was expelled from the house, and his biggest fear was that Sarah would be bullied even more harshly in his absence. At that moment, Belle resolved to become stronger to get his sister out of that hell. At the same time, he understood that mastering a normal weapon was nothing compared to a knight with a divine weapon. So, he worked hard to make himself stronger. He started by spending all his money to buy every weapon in the shop and trained relentlessly for 2 years. Every day, he risked his life battling monsters to gain experience. Belle thought everything would continue like this until he mastered his skills. But one day, a mysterious figure happened to witness his ambition and efforts. Amused, that person entrusted him with the sheath of the holy sword Avalon. One of the divine weapons allows its user to store their divine weapons and pass them on to others. It has been handed down from generation to generation to enhance its power. Throughout history, it has been wielded by 5 great heroes. If someone could use them, they would hold the world's most powerful divine weapon, and now that person would be Belle. After another 3 years of arduous training with the mysterious figure, Belle became extremely powerful, able to break the neck of a fire dragon with ease. After witnessing Belle's entire battle, the mysterious figure acknowledged that he had mastered Avalon. Now, even rank S knights were no match for him. So, he could return to the Catastrophe family to rescue his sister. It had been 5 years since he was expelled, and after enduring many hardships and bitter training, he finally gained the strength to protect his beloved sister. Immediately, Belle set off, riding his horse frantically to return. However, what awaited him was not Sarah but a fiery internal conflict between the Catastrophe family and the Roth-Windsor family. He rushed into the mansion to find Sarah, but unfortunately, when he found her, she had already passed away. Looking at his little sister's lifeless body, Belle could hardly believe his eyes and screamed in agony and despair. At that moment, he was suddenly attacked from behind by a mysterious figure. Although the assailant did not show his face, based on the mana emanating, Belle guessed that he was a rank D knight with a divine arm. Moreover, he knew Belle's true identity and was the one who had taken Sarah's life. Now, he intended to kill Belle alongside his sister. Seeing the enemy who had harmed his sister, Belle desperately wanted to fight back, but unfortunately, he was severely injured, barely able to protect his own life. In the end, he could only watch as the assailant struck him down. Perhaps Belle's grievances were too great, for God took pity on him, giving him a chance to start over and seek revenge on those who wronged him in his past life. Opening his eyes again, he found himself alive, in the Catastrophe family's chapel. At first, he was bewildered, not understanding what was happening. It wasn't until the priest spoke that he realized he had traveled back in time to the past, to the moment before the power divination ceremony. Without delay, the priest asked Belle to hold out his hands and begin to envision his divine weapon. Belle obeyed, assuming everything would be the same as in his previous life since he had yet to receive Avalon. However, what he did not expect was for Avalon to appear at today's divination ceremony. With the divine weapon Avalon in hand, Belle was even more determined to change his and his sister's fate. It seemed that from this moment on, his life was truly beginning. When the priest saw that Belle's divine weapon was a scabbard, he was shocked, believing Belle could never fight with such a thing. Despite the priest's attitude, Belle remained calm, knowing that he now possessed the greatest divine weapon. Immediately after leaving the chapel, he ran straight to his sister's room. Sure enough, at this moment in the past, she was still alive and as beautiful as he remembered. Seeing her brother return, Sarah happily ran up to ask him about today's divination ceremony, but before she could finish, Belle hugged her tightly. Perhaps the joy of reuniting with his beloved sister and the regrets of his past life made him emotional, unable to hold back his feelings. This time, he vowed never to let the tragedies of his previous life happen again. It wasn't until Sarah complained that he was hugging too tightly and couldn't breathe that he awkwardly let go. However, just as the two were feeling emotional and affectionate, their elder brother, who often bullied them, suddenly appeared and shattered the moment. As soon as he saw Belle, he sneered about the divination ceremony. Belle didn't hold back and directly told him that the weapon he received was a scabbard. Hearing this, Zane immediately mocked him, belittling Belle's scabbard as trash, fitting for a half-breed. He even insulted Sarah, calling them both idiots. Bell, furious, demanded that he retract his words, for while he could tolerate being insulted himself, he would never forgive anyone who dared insult Sarah. This scoundrel dared to do so and even lashed out at Bell. However, Bell now stood on a different level, so Zane was no longer capable of intimidating him. With a single punch, Bell shut him up and warned him never to insult Sarah again. But this was Zane's first time being hit like this, and he was infuriated. He immediately summoned his divine weapon, the flame spear, and threatened to tear Bell apart. Bell, seeing his foolish brother so serious, decided to go along with it since he was no longer afraid of anyone. He reassured Sarah, telling her to step back while he handled the situation, then summoned the scabbard of Avalon, ready to teach this guy a lesson. Even now, Zane remains arrogant, underestimating everyone. "I'm a rank E knight, you can't beat me." In reality, knights are ranked based on their power, starting at rank F after receiving their divine weapon and progressing to rank E once they can manage the mana within it. From rank D upward, they could use that mana for special attacks, and to reach rank B, they had to awaken special skills within their divine weapon. In short, a rank E knight was nothing compared to the countless masters out there. So, Bell just scoffed when he saw Zane boasting about reaching rank E at 14 while still an apprentice. Bell wasn't afraid and even mocked him, his demeanor completely different from before, infuriating Zane, who charged forward with his spear. Seeing Zane charging, Bell swiftly summoned the Caliburn of Radiance and slashed through the firepower ahead. With a single move, he destroyed Zane's divine weapon. Everything happened so quickly that it took Zane a moment to comprehend what had just occurred. He was baffled. Bell's scabbard was empty, yet now it housed such a powerful sword. At this point, he remained arrogant. "Don't mess with me. You tricked me. If I knew you had a weapon, it would have been different. Don't think I'll let this slide, you won't get away." But his bluster was just talk, and the next moment, he ran off. Of course, Bell wasn't about to let it go so easily. As Zane was about to flee the room, Bell drew the Ragnarok firearm from his scabbard and warned him. "Never mess with Sarah or me again. You'd better remember this if you try to pick a fight with us again, I'll blow your head off." Zane, seeing Bell so tense, dared not say anything else and ran off like a defeated coward, in stark contrast to his bravado earlier. After dealing with the bully, Bell turned back to Sarah, smiling happily at his sister. This made him even more determined to become stronger to protect her and himself. Meanwhile, after Bell taught him a lesson, Zane ran to Duke Galleon Catastrophe, the family head, and their father, to accuse Bell of forming a pact with a demon because his weapon was unusual. He also demanded that Bell be expelled from the family. However, after hearing the entire story, Galleon is neither angry nor suspicious but finds Bell very intriguing. He even went directly to see Bell, leaving Zane shocked. After the earlier confrontation, Bell was exhausted because, after all, he was still just a child. Moreover, he couldn't yet manage his mana well, so using the divine weapon drained him even more. Especially when using the Ragnarok firearm, he intended to fire a bullet, but in the end, he couldn't. Thus, he was still only considered strong compared to rank F. Bell then thought about something from his previous life. He still remembered that the enemy who attacked Catastrophe was the Roth-Windsor family. In reality, the Roth-Windsor family was also a renowned knight family and had long been considered rivals of the Catastrophe family. With the Roth-Windsor, anything could be an excuse to start a war. For this reason, Bell was certain that the one who harmed him and his sister was one of them. However, unlike his weak and helpless self in his previous life, Bell was determined to protect Sarah this time. But to do that, he first needed to improve his standing within the family. Perhaps the heavens were aiding him, for soon after, the head of the Galleon family came to his room. Seeing his father arrive, Bell was utterly surprised. After all, Galleon Catastrophe was the one who single-handedly defeated the Demon King in the Great War over 20 years ago, and he had even ventured alone to the Dark Continent, a place where the infamous monster Tartarus resided, to summon it. Due to his extraordinary achievements, he was revered by all as the Sword Saint. Initially, Bell didn't understand why someone as difficult to see as his father would show up there. But as soon as he saw Zane standing behind, he immediately understood that the bastard had tattled about the morning incident. However, to Bell, this was actually for the best, because the quickest way to improve his standing in the family was to attract his father's attention. He quickly grasped the situation and politely greeted his father as the head of the family. Galleon was quite surprised to see this, noticing that Bell had changed a great deal since the last time they met. At the same time, he told Bell not to be too formal and to speak freely, for he came today as a father. However, Bell politely declined, stating that even one wrong word could derail the entire conversation, so he always took full responsibility for his words and actions. Seeing his son being a bit stubborn, Galleon decided to go along with Bell's wishes, allowing him to stand. However, he deliberately exuded the aura and authority of a powerful head of the family. Next, he directly asked about the fight with Zane that morning. It was clear that he had strictly forbidden family members from sparring with one another, so why did Bell dare to disobey and fight his older brother? Seeing Bell in a passive position and being interrogated, Zane, the tattletale, was incredibly pleased. Despite facing his father's pressure, Bell resolutely explained that he did so to protect his sister from being bullied, even boldly declaring that he did not regret it, then told Galleon that abandoning those you love is a grave disgrace to a knight. So he would fight to the end to protect his sister, even if the opponent was his brother. Upon hearing this, Galleon immediately drew his family sword and pointed it at Bell, threatening, "Even if your opponent is me." Bell, without hesitation, proudly responded, "Even if the opponent is you, father, I will not falter, your grace." This might have been the first time Galleon had encountered such a stubborn child like Bell, finding it somewhat amusing. In the end, he decided to let the matter go. However, Zane, seeing Bell escape unscathed, couldn't bear it and immediately demanded that Galleon punish him. In truth, Galleon wanted to end things here, but the ungrateful brat kept escalating the issue, so he had no choice but to question him about bullying his sister and losing to his younger brother. As an older brother, being so weak and failing to set an example for your siblings is truly shameful. In the end, Galleon ordered Zane to leave. Finally, only Bell and his father remained in the room. At that moment, Galleon directly asked Bell to show him his true strength. Bell then summoned his divine weapon, Avalon. The moment Galleon saw it was a sword, he was utterly shocked because he had once heard tales of a legendary sword that contained the soul of the original knight, a divine weapon that had been passed down by the greatest heroes in history. To confirm his suspicion, he asked Bell if he had been using both a sword and a gun. Bell didn't hide anything and openly admitted to it. Not stopping there, he pulled out both divine weapons from their scabbards and revealed that there were still 3 more he hadn't used. At this point, Galleon was completely overwhelmed by the sight before him, thinking, "Could it be that my son will be the next great hero?" Before leaving, he offered some parting words to his son. "Bell, I usually have no interest in weakness or childishness, but I have high expectations of you. Keep it up." Finally, after seeing his father off, Bell could breathe a sigh of relief. The first step in gaining the head of the family's trust had been successful, and now, what he needed most was to improve his strength, aiming to reach rank D as quickly as possible, while also hunting monsters to accumulate more mana. With this in mind, he immediately began his journey to rank up by hunting some orcs in the nearby forest. Early the next morning, Bell arrived at the forest near the mansion, the same place he had trained after being exiled from the family in his previous life. But today, something felt strange. He had traveled quite far but hadn't seen any sign of monsters. It wasn't until later, after venturing deep into the forest, that Bell stumbled upon the suspicious corpse of an orc. Just one glance told him something was amiss. Sure enough, immediately after, Bell was suddenly attacked by an enormous force. Fortunately, he managed to block it in time, suffering only some scratches and dizziness. The attacker turned out to be a massive Fenrir. No wonder the surrounding monsters had disappeared. Initially, Bell only intended to hunt low-ranked orcs but had unexpectedly encountered a rank D monster like Fenrir. Even worse, his current mana was critically low, and his overall strength was only at rank E. It could be said that Bell facing this monster took a lot of work. Honestly, he just wanted to run back home at that moment. However, he feared that the monster would kill him the moment he turned his back. In the next instant, the Fenrir lunged at Bell with lightning speed. Luckily, Bell dodged just in time and quickly pulled out his flintlock pistol, Ragnarok, to counterattack. However, due to his mana shortage, the shot was fired too slowly, and the Fenrir easily avoided it. When the gun proved ineffective, Bell had no choice but to draw his sword and engage in a one-on-one duel. What followed was an intense combat between both sides. Although Bell had anticipated the strength of this Fenrir, he hadn't expected its cunning nature. Each time Bell was about to strike, the creature retreated just in time to evade him. This prolonged back and forth frustrated Bell greatly, as if it had been in his previous life, he could have easily dealt with it. Simply put, even in terms of speed, Bell was on the verge of being unable to keep up, let alone in his current fighting capacity. Shortly thereafter, Fenrir began employing a relentless chain of attacks, determined to wear Bell out. Indeed, Bell was being worn down by this beast to the point of near defeat. The moment he faced the creature's maw, he was truly terrified, wondering if he'd have to reincarnate again just after being reborn. Bell absolutely couldn't let that happen, so he resolutely summoned the divine weapon Achilles' shield for defense. However, Fenrir unexpectedly circled him, attacking from his blind spot and injuring him severely, so much so that both of Bell's divine weapons could no longer be sustained. Now, his guns, sword, and shield were all useless. Using the hammer would make it difficult to land a hit. Left with no choice, Bell played his trump card. Just before the beast charged at him, he summoned his final divine weapon from its scabbard. Truth be told, Bell hadn't wanted to resort to this, but this monster had pushed him into a corner. If that's what it wanted, he would oblige. Soon after, the creature charged again, this time with even greater fury, but Bell easily teleported onto its back. Then, with swift precision, he used his divine weapon hammer to deliver a critical blow, leaving the creature no chance to retaliate. To accomplish this, Bell had to wield the divine weapon Aegis, the Gauntlet of Darkness. It enhanced a person's physical strength by leaps and bounds and made Bell stronger with time. This meant that Bell was now on a new level, a higher plane, and the beast was no match for him. Time for you to meet your end. Come to me, you pitiful dog, Bell said as he launched a barrage of attacks. Only when the Fenrir was thoroughly exhausted did Bell finally spare it. He was also relieved to have ended the battle swiftly. After all, the Gauntlet of Darkness had unique abilities from the start, and it couldn't be overused in combat. The longer it was worn, the quicker Bell would fall into darkness. In simpler terms, using this divine weapon was akin to indulging in an addictive substance. The longer it was used, the harder it was to let go. However, from start to finish, Bell still couldn't understand why there was a Fenrir in this forest. He was sure there hadn't been any in his previous life. Just then, his divine hammer reacted. It seemed that after defeating the Fenrir, Bell could now harness its attributes. If that were the case, hunting stronger monsters would prove more beneficial in the long run than weaker ones. All things considered, Bell had gained quite a bit of loot from this battle and decided to stop here for now and return home. Elsewhere, at the Catastrophe estate, Sarah was in the garden when her older sister Jessica suddenly snatched away her wreath. After mocking her, Jessica threw the wreath to her subordinate, Spencer, commanding him to dispose of it. But Jessica didn't stop there. She wanted to use Sarah as target practice for her bullets. Luckily, before the bullet hit Sarah, Bell appeared just in time to protect her. The protagonist of our story stood there, saying, "Hey bitch, I caught you bullying my little sister. You better pray for the best place in hell." However, it seemed Jessica was unaware of what had happened to Zane after Bell had beaten him, so she remained smug. "What are you trying to prove here? You half-bloods sure know how to ruin my fun," she sneered. Bell didn't bother listening to her nonsense, focusing instead on comforting his sister, telling her not to be scared. Yet, Spencer, Jessica's subordinate, had the nerve to threaten him. To an outsider, it might have looked like Spencer was the master here. His arrogance infuriated Bell, who quickly reminded him, "Your tone is quite disrespectful towards the son of the Count." "Why should I respect the son of a mere concubine?" Spencer retorted. Jessica, standing nearby, chimed in, joining in the mockery. She insulted the siblings' origins and claimed that Bell had only defeated Zane by luck. Confident in her superiority, Jessica boasted that Bell couldn't possibly harm her. But Bell didn't want to waste time arguing with these foolish barking dogs. Instead, he challenged Jessica to test his strength for herself or stop bragging. Seeing Bell's bold provocation, Jessica, furious, orders Spencer to teach him a lesson. Spencer, clearly eager to fight, immediately drew his divine weapon. Unlike Zane, Spencer was a bona fide rank D knight, wielding a divine weapon in the form of an ice whip. His confidence in his strength was immense. He even described in detail how he would handle Bell, ensuring Bell would wet himself in fear whenever they crossed paths in the future. "I'll start by freezing your legs so you can't run away, then your arms and body until you're completely immobilized. And finally, I'll beat your face until even you can't recognize yourself." Bell, having grown tired of listening to his boasting, told Spencer to stop wasting time and do whatever he wanted quickly because he would make him pay for making Sarah cry. Spencer quickly lashed his whip at Bell, but Bell easily dodged, much to Jessica's surprise. But that wasn't all. Bell continued to predict Spencer's attacks, moving gracefully. As a rank D knight, Spencer wasn't bad at wielding his divine weapon, but compared to the training Bell had endured in his previous life, this was child's play. After attacking for a long time without landing a single blow, Spencer grew frustrated, accusing Bell of being a coward who was only good at dodging. Hearing this, Bell responded immediately. Okay. I won't dodge anymore, then. With that, Bell stood still, waiting for Spencer to come at him. This move shocked all three people present. They couldn't believe Bell dared to take such a risk. Seeing an easy opportunity, Spencer struck. True to his word, Bell didn't move and was hit directly, with his arms and legs encased in ice. But even with his body frozen, Bell remained calm, unaffected by Spencer's smugness. Oh, is that all you've got? My turn now, right? Bell summoned his fire gun weapon, Ragnarok, from its sheath, releasing its power to break the ice around his limbs. Now free to move again, Bell's actions left both Spencer and Jessica in stunned disbelief. Neither could believe Bell had two divine weapons. For these two obnoxious individuals, Bell had no patience. Without a word, he fired at them immediately. Sensing the tide turning against him, Spencer quickly used his ice skill to create a strong barrier, confident that Bell wouldn't be able to break through. However, in an instant, Bell shattered the ice with one shot, slapping Spencer across the face and sending him flying. Seeing how serious things had become, Jessica was shocked to realize that Bell had easily defeated a rank D knight. As for her, she was only ranked E, meaning she stood no chance against him. As Bell approached, ready to deal with her, Jessica panicked, retreating in fear and drawing her divine weapon in a hopeless attempt to defend herself. Bell didn't even bother dodging her attacks. He simply continued walking toward her, cornering her. At that moment, Bell was a terrifying figure, brimming with killing intent, warning Jessica never to harm Sarah again. Under the immense pressure of Bell's aura, Jessica was terrified. She no longer cared about maintaining the image of a noble lady and fled like a disgraceful failure. After achieving his goal, Bell didn't bother chasing her. Sarah, having witnessed her brother's incredibly cool performance, immediately ran over to check if Bell was hurt anywhere. Seeing that he wasn't hurt anywhere, she finally breathed a sigh of relief and gently gave him a new flower crown to replace the one that had been ruined. Being a true Siskin, Bell was overjoyed when his little sister gave him a gift and immediately decided that one day he would repay her with an entire country. Although the matter with Jessica had been settled, there were still other issues that Bell needed to address. Specifically, the fact that the servants and knights hired here all looked down on them because they were children of a concubine. Even if Bell had defeated Zane and Jessica, it wouldn't change that. They would continue to bully Sarah. As her brother, Bell felt that he needed to quickly improve his status within the family to protect her. To speed up this process, he went straight to Galleon to request permission to take the rank C test immediately. When Galleon heard Bell's request, he was very surprised and asked again to confirm or to see if Bell would change his mind. Bell firmly replied that he was certain he wanted to take the test, giving the excuse that he wanted to serve the emperor as a member of the family. In reality, the Catastrophe ducal house was a powerful arm of the royal family. Therefore, each member of the Catastrophe family had the responsibility of completing tasks assigned by the royal family. These tasks often involved protecting important figures in the royal family, eliminating monsters, and many other things. For Bell, the fastest way to improve his status within the family was to accumulate many achievements by completing difficult tasks, and to get those tasks, he needed to attain a higher rank first. Seeing his son's determination, Galleon sensed Bell's ambition, but he still refused the request, stating that Bell was too young to reach rank C and persuading him to wait a little longer. But before Galleon could finish speaking, Bell took out the fang of the Fenrir he had slain earlier and showed it to his father. "Am I qualified to take the test now?" When Galleon saw the fang, he was utterly astonished and immediately asked how Bell had accomplished this. Bell didn't say much but summoned his divine weapon as his answer. At this moment, Galleon realized in shock that Bell was able to use his abilities and attributes to single-handedly defeat a rank D Fenrir. It was highly likely that Bell was already at rank C. Finally, Galleon agreed to let Bell take the test, but only on the condition that Bell would not disappoint him. Soon after, Bell arrived at the arena to take the rank C knight test. First, he went to the reception desk to sign up. The receptionist mistook him for a child accompanying a family member. But when she heard Bell confidently confirm that he wanted to take the test himself, she was astonished and advised him to return when he was older. At that moment, a useless bastard chimed in, saying, "A kid as small as Bell should go home and cling to his mother." Some of the people present suddenly recognized the man as none other than the strongest rank D holy knight, Lennox Bright, explaining his arrogance. Not stopping there, Lennox continued mocking Bell, asking if he had a divine weapon to justify being here. Bell wasn't angry upon hearing this, he simply summoned Avalon to show him. Even with a legendary divine weapon in front of him, Lennox dismissed it as trash. The ignorant crowd around them laughed along with him. After a while of rambling, Lennox Bright grew bored, but before leaving, he deliberately mocked me. Though I didn't care much for this foolish brat, I didn't like his involvement in this test because it felt like he was lowering our standards. The fact is, he's not even old enough to take part in the test. Go run back to your mother. Ignoring Lennox Bright's nonsense, Belle was determined to sign up. The staff member then explained that if he wanted to take the test, he needed a rank D Knight certificate or a letter of recommendation from a rank B Knight or higher. Belle immediately handed over a letter of recommendation. Initially, the staff member didn't pay much attention, but when she saw it was from Duke Galleon Catastrophe, she quickly registered him for the test. Soon after, Belle and the other knights began the rank C exam. Once all the participants had gathered, the overseer quickly explained the test rules. First, the candidates would use a teleportation stone to descend into the underground dungeon, and they had 5 hours to retrieve a light stone from the 5th floor. There were a total of 3 light stones, so the first 3 to succeed would be promoted to rank C. Soon after, all the participants were teleported into the dungeon, officially beginning the test. It seemed like everyone was teleported to different locations on the 1st floor, as Belle didn't see any other participants nearby. After scouting the area, Belle noticed that the dungeon was quite large, but 5 hours was more than enough to complete the task. It felt like an easy game for Belle. Not to mention, the dungeon was crawling with monsters. The more monsters a holy knight slays, the more their energy increases. This was extremely beneficial for Belle. Meanwhile, a group of candidates was battling some lizard monsters when Lennox Bright suddenly appeared and took care of them for them. Although his personality wasn't great, and he liked mocking others, it was undeniable that he was more capable than many other knights of the same rank. With just a few basic sword moves, he eliminated all the monsters. In the end, I'm not in the same league as the rest of you. It was painful to hear, but it was the truth. The others didn't dare argue back, as they needed Lennox Bright's help to pass the test. Not long after, the 3 of them reached the final door where the light stones were kept. All they needed to do was step through the door, and victory would be theirs. But nothing in life is that easy, especially for side characters. Sure enough, the moment they opened the door, hordes of monsters were waiting for them, and the light stones were placed on a distant stone pedestal. Before they could even catch their breath, a monster lunged at them. Seeing this, Lennox Bright swiftly swung his sword, aiming for a quick resolution, but to his surprise, the monster didn't even have a scratch. Worse, it quickly countered with a punch right to his face. The other 2 were stunned, realizing that Lennox Bright was all talk and no action when it came to actual combat. At that moment, the monsters sensed easy prey and charged at them in a frenzy. Even though they were rank D knights, they were no match when fighting with all their might. It was only then that Lennox Bright realized this was the final challenge of the rank C exam. The test had been designed with monsters that counter the divine weapons of the participants. There was no way out now, this was the end. However, just as the monster was about to finish off Lennox Bright, Belle suddenly appeared like a god, smashing the monster to pieces and saving his life. Even Lennox himself was shocked to see the kid he had mocked earlier show up here. Belle didn't care, though. As the other monsters prepared to attack, he casually summoned his holy sword to slay them. Another monster flying overhead was taken down with a shot. Witnessing Belle's unpredictable mastery of divine weapons, the 3 knights could only stand there, dumbfounded. What in the world was that? But wasn't that kid's divine weapon just a lousy sword hilt? How could he wield so many divine weapons so skillfully? At first, they, especially Lennox Bright, had ridiculed him as a brat with a trashy sword hilt. But after seeing his incredible combat skills, they all fell silent, unable to say a word. After clearing out all the obstacles, Belle confidently walked up to the stone pedestal and claimed the light stones to complete the test. The 2 knights, seeing that 2 stones remained, hurriedly tried to flatter him. Earlier, they had followed Lennox Bright, but when they realized they wouldn't benefit from it, they immediately switched sides with Belle and began criticizing Lennox for being useless. If Lennox Bright scores 1 point for being a jerk, these 2 score an 8. They shamelessly demanded the remaining 2 stones, hoping to be promoted to rank C along with Belle. Though Belle might have looked like a 10-year-old boy, his soul was that of a young man who had lived 2 lifetimes and encountered all kinds of people. With just a glance, he saw through their dark intentions. Belle then summoned his divine hammer and smashed the 2 remaining light stones, leaving the 2 knights dumbfounded. Only 1 stone remained, safely in Belle's hand. He then arrogantly declared that if they wanted it, they would have to earn it themselves. You're all useless sycophants, blowing with whichever way the wind goes, and you're just a jerk who likes mocking others. None of you deserve the title of knight. After giving them a piece of his mind, Bell decided to leave, but Lennox Bright, now seemingly remorseful, admitted his mistakes. He expressed regret and vowed not to go down the wrong path again, promising to keep striving and never give up. Surprised by his sincerity and the determination still burning in him, Bell was caught off guard for a moment and agreed to meet again in the future. In the end, Bell successfully passed the test and earned his rank C certificate, with his magic power having increased significantly thanks to all the monsters he defeated in the dungeon. With that, Bell was nearly halfway through his plan. He only needed to secure his position in the family, and then he could protect Sarah. Meanwhile, in a different development, in the meeting room of the Catastrophe family, the members, along with the family head Galleon, were discussing the Blighted Gang, a group of rogue knights causing trouble and plotting to overthrow the kingdom of Ersh. At present, 3 rank B knights were leading an army into their territory, and the Catastrophe family had been tasked with stopping them. One member had heard that the enemy had defeated an entire unit of Duke Shripe's forces. Another rumor suggested that the enemy had enhanced their divine weapons using the 5-point dark magic scroll. Given the situation, Galleon decided to dispatch 3 rank B knights from the family to eliminate them. Besides the 2 already present at the meeting, there was still 1 knight who had yet to arrive. Just as they mentioned him, the man entered, ready to take on the task. His crazed, dark appearance made it clear he was a force to be reckoned with. At the same time, in the manor's rear courtyard, Sarah was being served a meal by the servants. It was exactly as Bell had feared. Sarah, despite being the rightful master, was looked down upon and treated poorly by the staff in the mansion. This made her deeply sad. Only when her brother returned did she finally smile again. After obtaining the rank C certificate, Bell passed through the market and shops to buy some delicious food for his little sister, different from the bread and water the servants served. Watching his sister eat so happily that she cried, Bell became even more determined to quickly improve her new life. In the meeting room at this moment, Galleon's eldest son, Jean Catastrophe, along with his subordinate Razor, arrived to deliver an important announcement. Jean had reached rank A, becoming one of the youngest masters in the family's history, and everyone was thrilled upon hearing the news. Unlike the joyful reactions of the others, Jean remained completely calm, as if this was a trivial matter. He merely asked his father if there was anything else. At this point, Galleon revealed that the family's mission wasn't over yet, because the Emperor had entrusted them with another important task. They were to escort Princess Rika Shuttagvalane to the neighboring country of Ersh. They had to ensure and plan a safe route. Perhaps due to the recent suspicious movements of nearby gangs, in addition to the royal guards, the Emperor wanted the Catastrophe family to protect the princess. While everyone was discussing a safe route, Bell suddenly barged in and asked them to wait for a moment. Seeing his son return unharmed, the old man immediately knew that Bell had passed the test and successfully ranked up. Upon seeing Bell's rank C certificate, everyone in the room was astonished. They hadn't expected someone of his age to achieve such a feat. Of course, Bell's interruption wasn't just to show off, he also wanted to propose a safer route himself. He suggested that because monsters rarely appeared on the Ricotta route, it was often chosen by bandits as their base. Furthermore, it would take 3 days to reach Ersh via that route. Bell proposed it would be better if they crossed the monster plains instead. This was an extremely risky suggestion, and everyone immediately objected. However, Bell calmly explained that the monsters in the plains were mainly Ziyang lions and darkness. Both of these creatures were nocturnal, so passing through during the day would be safe. Moreover, by doing so, they could reach Ersh in just 1 day. After hearing his explanation, everyone in the meeting room fell silent, unable to refute his points. Inwardly, some were even impressed by Bell's sharpness and knowledge of monsters. Bell didn't stop there, volunteering to take on the responsibility himself, vowing with his honor that he would escort the princess on the quickest and safest route. The room remained silent until Jean spoke up. "Who permitted you to butt in here, you brat?" It was clear that Bell's older brother was deliberately trying to make things difficult for him. Despite the immense pressure Jean was putting on him, making Bell feel a bit tense, Bell stood his ground, refusing to back down, while pulling out Avalon. "I'm being completely serious. I'll show you that I can safely escort the princess at any cost." Hearing this, Razor, Jean's subordinate, reprimanded Bell for his insolence, while Jean ordered him to test if Bell was all talk. Confident with his knightly rank B abilities and knowing Jean had his back, Razor drew his divine weapon, ready to teach Bell a lesson. He dashed forward at lightning speed to attack. Though Bell managed to block the strike, it took all his strength, and he had to admit Razor's speed was impressive. He had almost been hit. In this tense situation, Bell realized it was probably still too soon for him to duel with a rank B. At that moment, Galleon stepped in to put an end to the conflict, announcing that he would entrust Bell with the task, despite some objections from others. In the end, Bell thanked his father and set off straight to the royal palace, Shunned Castle, to meet Princess Rika. After their introduction, the two boarded the carriage and left the royal palace on their way to the kingdom of Ersh. But Bell felt somewhat unwelcome, as the princess coldly refused his escort right upon their first meeting. Furthermore, throughout their time in the carriage, she didn't speak a word. Having been single for 2 lifetimes and never having spoken to a girl, Bell wasn't sure how to handle the situation. Left with no other option, he asked directly, "Please excuse me, my lady. I know this question may be rude, but why do you say you don't need me? I just don't like relying on others. I have my divine weapon, so I'm not weak enough to need protection." It turned out this girl was even prouder than Bell had expected. However, since Rika was still just a growing child when she saw the fun at the festival, she couldn't resist poking her head out to take a look. Seeing this, Bell couldn't help but laugh. Realizing he had been somewhat rude, he explained that watching the princess reminded him of his little sister back home. "I imagined she'd react the same way when passing by something so lively." Upon learning that Bell had a younger sister, Rika became much more interested in their conversation. "Are you and your sister close?" "Yes, we often play together. She's still very young, so we usually play house or things like that." "I see. In my house, it's not like that at all. Though I have many siblings in the palace, I can't trust any of them. My home is quite similar. My siblings always look for reasons to bully me and my sister just because we're the stepchildren, and our mother passed away early, so no one protects us. That's why I understand your feelings with all my heart. If anything happens, I'm always willing to help. I told you, I don't need to rely on anyone." Their initial awkwardness seemed to have faded, and the two began talking more freely throughout the journey, until nightfall. They finally reached the border fortress of the Kingdom of Ersh in just 1 day as planned and met Peter Fred, the captain of the knights there. Upon hearing this name, Bell felt a sense of familiarity but couldn't recall where he had heard it before. Additionally, he found it strange that they were welcoming the princess outside the city gates. Even though there were many guards, it still wasn't safe. As expected, no sooner had he said this than an assassin, hidden in the trees nearby, threw a dagger at the princess, but Bell had been on guard from the start and managed to block it. At this moment, everyone in the group suddenly panicked, realizing they were under attack by assassins. The assassins, now exposed, had risked everything by launching a mass attack to kill the princess. With so many daggers flying toward her, Bell worried he couldn't block them all to protect Rika. But unexpectedly, Peter was faster and managed to block all the attacks. Witnessing this, Bell guessed that Peter's abilities must be around rank B. At that moment, the assassins abruptly retreated, prompting Peter to order his subordinates and Bell to chase after them. Meanwhile, Peter himself would personally escort Princess Rika far away from the capital. A little later, Peter brought her and a soldier from the escort team to a hideout far from where the assassins were. But before they could even breathe a sigh of relief, Peter suddenly acted, cutting the throat of the only soldier who had followed the princess. At that moment, Rika realized he was in league with the assassins and had come to kill her. Though she usually tried to appear strong, with a cold, emotionless demeanor, when faced with a real killer, she was so terrified that her limbs trembled, and she couldn't summon her divine weapon. She thought she was about to be sent off to the afterlife by this madman, but luckily Bell, the hero, arrived just in time to save her, the damsel in distress. So, our young hero arrived, and the assassin Peter had reached the moment of his demise. Seeing Bell's appearance, Peter knew that all the guards outside had been defeated by him. Yet, despite this, he remained arrogant and looked down on Bell. In the face of his vile taunts, Bell remained calm and composed, revealing Peter's true identity as von Riegel. A professional assassin who wielded divine weapons in the form of lightning twin swords, von Riegel's recent targets included Count Schreip, Count Vermuth, and then Marquis Eisenbart. Bell knew this because, in a previous life, he had captured this man after a manhunt. But Bell had never expected him to disguise himself as a knight captain to assassinate the princess. Although von Riegel was incredibly shocked to hear Bell recounting such classified information about him, he quickly regained his composure because he was certain that a C-rank knight like Bell didn't have the skills to defeat him. Bell, too, knew that facing a rank B opponent was beyond his current capabilities. However, as long as his opponent was von Riegel, everything would be as easy as flipping a hand, and this was a sure-win situation. Seeing Bell's confident attitude, showing no fear of losing his life, von Riegel became incredibly excited, launching an immediate attack before Bell could react. But all of von Riggle's attacks had already been predicted, so Belle effortlessly dodged them all with fluid movements. Even in close-range combat, Belle could easily avoid everything, and when von Riggle tried to sneak around to attack from behind, Belle still managed to block him without even looking. It was as if Belle could read every movement von Riggle made in advance. After struggling for a while without success, von Riggle's face turned pale, as if he had just eaten something disgusting. He couldn't believe Belle could match his speed. But Belle wasn't finished yet. He continued his psychological assault, arrogantly proclaiming that he could deal with his enemy at any moment, driving von Riggle into even greater panic and despair. At that moment, Belle knew his taunts had worked, and in this unstable state, von Riggle would surely reveal more weaknesses. The two continued their chase, with Belle constantly evading while von Riggle kept attacking in vain. Neither was willing to give in. Meanwhile, Rika stood nearby, witnessing everything in awe. She couldn't believe that someone as young as Belle could fight at such a high level. This made her reflect on how the divine weapon she had always prided herself on was nothing compared to Belle's abilities. Thinking about this, she felt a bit embarrassed. After a while, Belle grew bored of playing around, so he finally decided to kill this scumbag and made his move to spill some of his blood. Von Riggle, sensing Belle's murderous intent, immediately grew highly alert and retreated far back. But knowing that this standoff couldn't go on forever, he decided to reveal his trump card. Belle wasn't surprised, as he already knew from his memories of his past life what von Riggle was about to do. "It's no big deal, you bastard, come on and fight me now," Belle taunted, sure of himself. Then von Riggle slowly pulled out a mysterious vial and drank it in front of Belle. Moments later, he began convulsing as if he were high on drugs. At a glance, Belle realized something was wrong because what von Riggle had consumed was Dragon King's tears. This was a rare item that allowed the user's strength and mana magical energy to be enhanced to their maximum level. As expected, shortly after, von Riggle returned to normal, stronger than ever. Before Belle could react, he quickly threw daggers at him, but unlike before. This time, the daggers didn't fly straight but hovered in mid-air, connecting to form a mana electric grid, a deadly magical energy trap. A single misstep could mean instant death. But with the protagonist's halo and the author's protection, our young hero was strong indeed. Belle pulled out the divine shield of Achilles to protect himself and tried to retreat from the mana grid. Seeing Belle resist, von Riggle poured even more mana into the grid, electrocuting Belle. At that life or death moment, Belle thought he was about to meet his ancestors, but the author sent Rika into the fray just in time to save him from certain death. With his prey snatched from him, von Riggle flew into a rage and rushed at Rika, but Belle seized the moment to strike him down with a single sword stroke, sending him to the underworld to meet Hades. "If you're reborn as a human in the next life, make sure to live honorably, scum," Belle said. Fortunately, after eliminating von Riggle, neither he nor Rika was injured, and thanks to this battle, their relationship became much closer. Belle was even given a ring by Rika as a token of trust and friendship. After completing the mission, he quickly returned to the Catastrophe Mansion as requested by the family head. The family head must have received updates from Princess Rika, so he had some words of praise for Belle. However, what he did not expect was that Princess Rika had given Belle Solomon's ring, one of the items containing a special amount of mana and symbolizing royalty. Perhaps this son of Galleon was more exceptional than the family head thought, so he decided to register Belle at Athena earlier than scheduled. Belle was extremely shocked upon hearing this. It was known that the Athena Knights Academy was a training ground for knights, exclusively for the elite nobility to attend. Normally, the children of the Catastrophe family would be tutored by private instructors. However, the family also had a tradition of sending candidates for the next family head position to an outside academy to learn about social connections. This meant that Belle had been chosen as the heir, thereby elevating his status within the family. Being a true Siskin, upon tasting the first fruits of his efforts, Belle immediately asked for permission to move his sister Sarah into a better room in the main building. Seeing her happily playing in the new room, Belle felt that all his efforts so far had not been in vain. From this moment on, Sarah would surely be treated and cared for better, while Belle would continue with his plans. Specifically, in 5 years, if things didn't change, the Catastrophe family would face an attack, putting Sarah in danger once again. Above all, Belle needed to quickly find out the identity of the one who wronged the two siblings in their previous lives, making becoming the heir an essential step in his plan. Meanwhile, Razor had reported to Jin that Belle would be attending Athena as the second person after Jin to study there and was a candidate for the heir position. Razor, feeling threatened by Belle, advised his master to take care of him before it was too late. However, Jin didn't think it was necessary. To him, Bell was just a harmless kid right now, and if Bell became stronger in the future, it would only be to Jin's advantage since his hobby was to personally crush perfect things. Seeing his master like this, Razor didn't dare to go against him, but he still had doubts in his mind and planned to give Bell a beating as a warning. On the other side, Bell was diligently training in the courtyard, unaware that he had already been targeted by some mad dogs. What Bell needed and cared about the most right now were the unique skills of a rank B knight or higher, which he could use when he entered Athena. But to achieve those skills, he needed to hunt a significant number of high-ranking monsters, which would be extremely difficult in the coming days. While deep in thought about how to solve this, Razor suddenly visited him, surprising Bell. Razor, uncharacteristically polite, bowed and apologized for pointing his weapon at Bell in the conference room last time, even inviting him to join a monster extermination mission. Upon hearing this, Bell was extremely confused, thinking to himself, what the hell is going on? Did this guy take the wrong medicine today? But outwardly, he maintained a calm demeanor and asked Razor why. Razor responded with a serious expression, saying that he was impressed by Bell's achievement during the Princess Escort mission and wanted to get to know him better. It was obvious that he was lying. There was no way Bell believed these deceitful words, but since Razor was the son of a duke, Bell couldn't refuse a family mission. As soon as Bell agreed, Razor feigned gratitude, but inwardly, he was thrilled that he had lured his prey into the trap. Bell then asked for more details about the mission and learned that the monster extermination team would be traveling to a remote and desolate place called Ithaca, a perfect location for Bell to hunt monsters and gather more mana. The next day, Bell and Razor hurried to Ithaca to carry out the mission. Besides hunting monsters to upgrade his skills, Bell was also very interested in ambrosia, an extremely rare item that could greatly enhance one's mana. Bell speculated that just a small sip would be enough to boost him to rank B without the hassle of hunting down monsters. However, the chance of obtaining ambrosia was slim because it was hidden in a secret dungeon. Based on memories from his previous life, Bell recalled that one of the hidden dungeons would open at the place where they stopped, the town of Ithaca. That night, Razor privately met with Bell to clarify the mission. They had to completely eradicate a species of monster known as Leviathan during this time. A few years ago, it had been confirmed that the number of these rank C monsters was quite large, possibly a pack of dozens. Once they were spotted, the team had to take them down immediately to avoid being surrounded. Since it was late, everyone would start the mission the next day, and with nothing else to discuss, Bell went to his room to rest early. Meanwhile, Razor, seeing that Bell showed no signs of suspicion or caution, was quite pleased. After all, he had planned to murder Bell the next day and staged the scene as an accident during the mission. Furthermore, Razor believed that in such a remote, deserted place, no one would bother to investigate thoroughly, especially a nobody like Bell. No matter how talented Bell was, once he died, everything would become meaningless. Razor's plan sounded perfect and meticulous, but he made a grave mistake in underestimating Bell. He would never know that the nobody he didn't take seriously was a seasoned fox who had lived 2 lives. Of course, Bell wasn't foolish enough to believe all of Razor's words, so as soon as he confirmed Razor was asleep, Bell immediately snuck outside to survey the situation and gather more information about the location of the ambrosia. He remembered that the hidden dungeon with the ambrosia was located deep in the monster forest, a place where no humans dared to venture. Only Bell and his master had discovered this dungeon a long time ago, so no one else could know its location. After a long while, Bell finally stopped at the base of a massive tree and entered without hesitation. Upon seeing the green color of the dungeon, he knew he was in the right place. Hidden dungeons were categorized into different levels, and their difficulty could be determined by their color. For example, blue signified rank A, while green was rank B. Once Bell cleared the dungeon, he would receive the symbolic item ambrosia as a reward. Although it sounded tempting, to clear the dungeon, he had to defeat the boss. When Bell found this place in his previous life, he was only rank D, so his master had prevented him from entering. But now, even though fighting rank B or rank A monsters like the boss was no easy task, Bell wasn't afraid. Having lived 2 lifetimes, Bell feared nothing. Without a second thought, he stepped right into the dungeon. Soon enough, he encountered a formidable monster. Although its rank wasn't high and it wasn't the boss, Bell struggled for a long time, unable to kill it. He tried slashing with his sword and using a sledgehammer, but the monster's armor was only slightly scratched, leaving Bell helpless. Realizing physical attacks were ineffective, he switched to magical ones, but to no avail. Bell started feeling puzzled, as he had never encountered such a strange monster before. He guessed it was at least rank C or higher. This was going to be tough. If he kept going like this, he'd be reduced to just a pile of bones. Luckily, Bell quickly thought of combining both physical and magical attacks. He patiently waited for the right moment, then blasted the monster, sending it straight to the afterlife. After confirming that the monster was completely dead, Bell finally sighed in relief. However, he couldn't let his guard down just yet. If a basic monster in this dungeon was strong enough to give him a hard time, the boss was bound to be 100 times more terrifying. This trip was dangerous. Carelessness could cost him his life. But in return, Bell could collect special items from the dungeon monsters. For example, after killing the headless monster earlier, he obtained a mythical healing potion that could restore both his physical strength and mana. Thanks to it, Bell recovered enough strength to defeat more monsters and reach the final stage. When he entered the room, Bell was overwhelmed by its resemblance to a cathedral. The boss wasn't as hideous as he had imagined but rather looked like a knight in armor. One glance and Bell knew it was a fearsome foe. The moment the monster began approaching, Bell was immediately on high alert. After a moment of posturing to intimidate the opponent, it finally attacked. Fortunately, Bell reacted just in time, narrowly dodging its sword. It was no wonder this monster was the final boss of the dungeon. If Bell hadn't avoided its attack just now, it would have been over for him. But the boss wasn't done. It raised its sword to strike again, but this time Bell decided to draw his weapon and engage in combat. Unexpectedly, Bell's attack didn't even scratch the boss, not leaving a single mark. He quickly tried the same tactic from earlier, but this boss wasn't as easy to deal with as the first monster. Bell fired several shots but missed repeatedly. After a long while, he finally hit it, but the attack had no effect. The boss remained unfazed, even after being shot by Bell's Ragnarok rifle. Shocked, Bell was almost caught off guard by a surprise attack, but he swiftly summoned his divine shield to block it. The boss didn't stop there, launching a sudden leap and slashing downward. With his mana running low, Bell couldn't block it directly, so he had no choice but to dodge. The monster was cunning, pretending to strike from the front to mislead Bell, then circling behind him for a surprise attack. This time, Bell was struck for real, but he didn't give up. As soon as he fell, he quickly drank the remaining mythical potion and stood back up to fight. In this life or death situation, Bell knew he had to take a risk to win. His strongest weapon, the Achilles shield, was his last hope. He channeled a large amount of magic into the shield and threw it directly at the boss. However, the monster easily dodged the flying shield and charged at Bell. He quickly retreated, trying to create some distance, as his only defensive weapon had flown away. If he got hit now, it would be the end for sure. But then, just in time, the shield unexpectedly boomeranged back and struck the monster. Seizing this 1-in-a-million chance, Bell leapt into the air and used all his strength to strike the relentless beast. Thanks to this decisive blow, the monster collapsed and lay still. Bell thought it was finally over, but no, the monster was incredibly tough and refused to die. It shed all its armor, revealing its true form. Not stopping there, the boss drew a sharp blade from its scabbard. Without the weight of its heavy armor, it moved with astonishing speed, attacking Bell so fast that he couldn't react in time and was thrown against the wall. This time, Bell truly had no strength left to stand, let alone defend himself. Meanwhile, the monster, full of murderous intent, continued advancing toward him. Just as it was about to swing its sword, Bell summoned his devil's hand to block the attack. Now, Bell was truly furious, resorting to using this dark weapon to end the fight. This time, the monster would not escape. Both of them quickly charged at each other, engaging in a fierce duel unlike anything before. Bell could now fight on equal footing with the monster without breaking a sweat. Indeed, after the monster shed its outer armor, its strength reached a whole new level. However, its speed still couldn't compare to Bell's current abilities. As the two were about to clash, Bell intended to exploit an opening to strike, but unexpectedly, the monster skillfully dodged his attack and countered. At that moment, Bell noticed something strange about the creature. It moved faster every time the scars on its body turned red. Even so, the monster was still not skilled enough to take him down. In this tense situation, Bell desperately needed more power to finish the battle, so he decided to risk using dark magic from the demonic soul within his glove. Of course, everything comes with a price. The demonic soul agreed to lend Bell its magical power on the condition that it would eventually claim Bell's soul. Immediately afterward, a massive surge of magical power coursed through Bell's body, causing him immense pain. Not only that, but the demonic soul also took this opportunity to manipulate Bell's mind to possess his body. It continuously reminded Bell of the miserable days when he lived worse than a dog, trampled underfoot, powerless to do anything but endure. Eventually, the demonic soul succeeded in temporarily controlling Belle. Using its dark magical strength, Belle entered a berserk state and began fighting fiercely with the monster. However, in a moment of madness, the image of his sister Sarah unexpectedly appeared in Belle's mind, helping him regain some composure. This meant that the demonic soul had failed to fully manipulate his psyche and could no longer drive him to slaughter or destroy. Once he regained consciousness, Belle firmly declared that he only fought to protect his sister, so the demon should shut up and just give him its power. Belle then continued his fierce battle with the monster, with both sides being evenly matched. After a prolonged struggle, the monster began to tire, moving more sluggishly and exposing openings. At that moment, Belle swiftly severed one of its arms and, before it could defend itself, delivered a fatal blow, slicing it in half. In the final moments of the battle, Belle emerged victorious in a stunning manner. However, he also realized that he had sustained significant damage earlier in the fight. Due to using the dark artifact Aegis, he had nearly been completely controlled by the wicked soul within it. All in all, it was clear that he should avoid relying on such forbidden tools. After defeating the boss, Belle was rewarded with the ambrosia item, just as he had hoped. If he consumed this, his mana would jump to rank B, and he would unlock many unique abilities associated with the divine arm. It sounded powerful, but Belle had never seen ambrosia in real life before and wasn't sure if he could even drink it. After a moment of deliberation, Belle decided to take the risk and down the entire bottle. Indeed, it was the real deal. After absorbing it, Belle could immediately feel his mana boiling and surging within him, filling him with excitement. However, once the initial high passed, what awaited him was an excruciating pain burning in his chest. At this point, the scabbard Avalon beside him began to react violently, but before Belle could respond to it, he fainted from the pain. When he finally regained consciousness, he was shocked to find himself in a strange and unfamiliar place. While still dazed, trying to make sense of the situation, a mysterious figure in a cloak suddenly appeared. Belle instantly recognized this person as the master who had trained him in his previous life and entrusted him with the sacred weapon. However, it wasn't just him. Every hero who had wielded Avalon was present to welcome Belle to the spirit realm. At last, we got a glimpse of Belle's true master, Regis, an old man who wielded the sacred shield of Achilles. The two were overjoyed to see each other after such a long time, but Belle couldn't understand something. In this life, they had never met, so how could Regis recognize him? Regis explained that he had always been watching over Belle from this realm. No matter where Belle went or what era he lived in, as long as Avalon remained in his hands. This meant that Regis had witnessed everything about Belle, including his fate in his previous life and his reincarnation in this one. Seeing that Belle was still confused, Regis further explained that this was a spiritual realm located within the holy artifact Avalon, where the 5 divine arms and the souls of their bearers resided. He referred to them as souls because their real bodies either no longer showed signs of life or existed somewhere else. For example, Regis's true body had retired and was living deep in the mountains. In essence, Avalon is a divine tool that connects the souls of its bearers. When Belle carried Avalon across time and reversed its flow, the current Regis had lost it. In short, all those who had wielded Avalon were connected through it. However, to this day, Regis still couldn't confirm whether Belle's journey back in time was related to Avalon's power or not. But at the very least, he was certain that Avalon itself didn't possess such an ability. After listening to his master's explanation, Belle had grasped some crucial information, though many mysteries remained unsolved. Regis, seeing his student had matured, grown wiser, and successfully protected his sister, was overjoyed, continuously patting Belle on the head and praising him, much to Belle's embarrassment. Belle then asked why Regis had suddenly appeared here at this particular moment. Regis hadn't even had a chance to answer before Riven, the second successor and the bearer of the fire cannon, suddenly interrupted their conversation. Belle's initial impression of this man wasn't great. Holding a high position, Riven liked to tease. Even when shaking hands with him, the guy wasn't serious at all, making Belle's expression look as if he desperately needed to use the bathroom. Perhaps his smirk was too irritating, so Charlotte, the third successor, spoke up. "Hey, stop it, can't you see the kid is visibly annoyed? I was just joking, why so serious?" At this moment, the fourth successor, Horu, also spoke up, but the three of them didn't get along very well. As soon as they opened their mouths, they started bickering. Regis, trying to offer advice out of goodwill, was immediately shut down by Charlotte. Even Riven took this opportunity to poke fun at him. Watching this scene felt no different from a group of delinquent kids bullying an old man. Belle stood aside, watching in boredom, but he remembered that his master had once told him about these successors. All of them were extraordinary heroes who had bravely fought against the Demon King. Just then, Adam, the first successor, interrupted the argument. He gave Bel an official answer as to why he was there. In truth, the 5 of them had gathered here to advise him. The 6th successor should not unlock the power of his divine arm at this time because doing so would require an enormous amount of mana. If Bel were to unlock it now, his immature body would likely be unable to withstand the mana and might explode. Hearing this, Bel understood the cause of his recent pain. It was because his body hadn't fully developed, and he couldn't handle such a large influx of mana. In the end, Adam advised him to wait a while longer until his body was ready to unlock the power. However, Bel immediately refused his advice. He absolutely couldn't stop now because what he needed most was the strength to protect his sister. Seeing his determined attitude, Adam didn't waste any more words trying to persuade him. Instead, he directly attacked to show Bel what was what. Adam's speed was so fast that, with just one blink, he had already moved behind Bel for a strike. But the protagonist wasn't easy prey. Bel had anticipated this and had positioned his scabbard, Avalon, behind him to block the attack. This was a small test that everyone had set up to see if the 6th successor was worthy of standing with them and unlocking the divine arm's powers. And thankfully, Bel passed the test with flying colors, proving he was indeed deserving of his role as the 6th successor of Avalon. On this occasion, Adam even handed him his holy sword and granted Bel permission to unlock his powers. They would teach him other skills when the time came. After being acknowledged by the other successors, Bel promised that he would unlock all the powers and wouldn't let them down. Finally, they said their goodbyes and vanished. At this moment, Bel found himself alone again in the dungeon, exactly where he had defeated the monster earlier. Everything that had just happened felt like a dream, but the disappearance of his battle wounds and the presence of the holy sword reminded him that it was all real, not some hallucination. It seemed that this hidden dungeon exploration had opened up many rare opportunities for Bel. Afterward, Bel returned just in time to prepare for the monster hunt early the next morning. Fortunately, Razor didn't suspect a thing. Instead, he led the team onto a boat, heading out to sea. On the way to where the common ranked monsters usually appeared, Bel sensed something unusual. These leviathans were only C-rank monsters. Given that Razor was one of the top B rankers, he shouldn't have needed to form a team with Bel just to kill these creatures. At this point, Bel was truly puzzled as to why Razor had brought him to this desolate place. Then, Razor deliberately cut a bit of his blood to lure the monsters closer. As expected, it wasn't long before dozens of leviathans began swimming toward the boat. Seeing the sheer number of them, both Razor and Bel were stunned. However, Bel still saw a chance for victory, since these creatures were only C rank. So he turned to Razor, suggesting they split up to deal with smaller groups. But at this moment, Razor revealed his true nature, showing himself to be a despicable traitor. With a sneer, he openly declared that Bel would die here. Immediately afterward, Spencer, who had been hiding in the shadows, launched a surprise attack to hold Bel down. But by the time Bel realized what was happening, it was too late. He was trapped between 2 rabid dogs, attacking relentlessly. Next, Spencer used his skill to freeze Bel's legs and tossed him into the sea to become food for the monsters. After confirming that Bel didn't resurface, the 2 scumbags relaxed and went on to kill the monsters. However, they could never have imagined that Bel had summoned the shield of Achilles and used wind magic to create a small pocket of air inside the shield. This way, he could breathe underwater and avoid detection. From the start, when Razor had made his offer, Bel had sensed something was off. But he hadn't expected him to team up with Spencer. It seemed they had both held a grudge against Bel from before. At this moment, Bel didn't rush to the surface. Instead, he stayed underwater to observe the situation above. However, things were looking grim. With so many monsters swimming around, it would be tricky to get out alive. First, Bel used the shield of Achilles to smash the ice around his legs so he could move. Unfortunately, he hit too hard, causing himself to bleed. This attracted the attention of the monsters. With no other choice, Bel drew his holy sword, ready to face them head on. He figured he might as well unlock the power of the divine arm while he was at it. As the first monster lunged at him, Bel swiftly skewered it with his sword. The others, seeing this, went berserk and charged as well. But Bel wasn't foolish enough to take them all on at once. Instead, he used his divine arm skill, creating multiple holy sword clones to slaughter the horde of monsters. Taking advantage of the situation, Bel slashed through dozens of light-infused strikes underwater, cutting down the entire swarm of leviathans. Meanwhile, above the water, the 2 dogs, Spencer and Razor, were struggling to kill the monsters one by one, still feeling quite pleased with themselves, thinking Belle was dead. But as karma dictates, those who live poorly often meet swift retribution. Indeed, in the very next moment, a massive, colossal monster suddenly broke through the ice at the surface, rising to fight, sealing their fate as nothing more than dried up corpses.